Welcome back to Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
What's up, everybody? I'm so disoriented, but I'm here and excited
It's our rushed Thanksgiving episode. We were trying to do stuff early because Ben has to leave for his flight. He actually might leave middle of the episode if things go terribly, but we're doing it. We're doing it live. We also have Mike on the producer chair today. Ruben is at home in Ohio. You have a mic. You can talk into the mic.
I know. I am, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I can be heard by myself since I'm wearing the headphones as well.
Yeah. Lights are on. We're ready to do this. Thanksgiving episodes are always a mess. Happy Thanksgiving. If you're listening to this right now, it's Wednesday. If you're watching this live, it's today on Tuesday. And if you are here watching the edited version of this video, so with card art and all the things we're talking about and visual aids, this will be Thursday, which is actual Thanksgiving. So it might come out on Friday this week. I don't know yet. We'll figure that out. Hopefully it's Thursday.
Yeah, hopefully it's Thursday, but we're back. We're doing an episode today. We've got a sweet deck tech to talk about. It's actually like really, really epic. It's really, really awesome. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the color green in Magic. Alex's contention is that it is the best color in Modern. I may refute that. We're going to get into that. If you guys want to follow along with anything we're doing, be sure to follow us on Twitter at the MMCast. It's the best place to follow along with us.
In the outline, I had no Twitter shout out because Twitter is right below us. Or will be popping up now.
Yes, but on audio, people who are listening,
they've heard. They know where to find us. Okay. We also have we have a Patreon, and that's kind of the main thing. We want to cut down a little bit on what we shout out, but our Patreon is really important. It's how we're able to do all of this new content we're doing. It's how we're able to do stuff. It's where this deck tech came from. So if you are a $10 tier patron, you're able to submit deck techs, and we'll do one when you do it, as long as we have time on episodes. So thank you all so much. Especially big thank you to Derek Stafford, who provided the deck tech for today. We also have a new schedule. So every week we're now doing kind of things a little bit differently, but same-ish. Basically, every Tuesday we're going to do a live version of the episode. For those of you currently in the chat, you're watching it. For those people listening on audio or video, if you want to check it out, the idea is as it's happening, it's every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Coast time. PST.
Yeah.
On top of that, then the audio will come out every Wednesday, so it comes out the next day. The video edited version, so if you want to watch it like high quality versions of the video with high quality video and card art, whenever we mention a card, so you know what we're talking about, that produced video version of the video comes out every Thursday, and then every Monday we have a new video series called Hot Takes. And as much as the internet has now buried that name into the ground, basically the idea is we take little segmented videos, versions of the podcast, and we talk about a specific subject matter for about 5 minutes every Monday. So make sure to keep it out for all those. If you want to get alerted, subscribe on YouTube. If you want to be able to see the live feed, we're on Twitch and YouTube, so you can subscribe in either place, and all of those good things. The last thing is we have new music. Matt Kessler has provided a new intro and outro theme. You'll hear it in this week's main episode as well as this week's Hot Take. So that's kind of the new opening theme music. There'll also soon be new opening audio that hopefully will cover some of these shout outs for us, so we don't even have to do it every episode.
Yeah, big updates for the MMCast coming at the end of this year and into 2020.
The first thing we're talking about is green the best color in Magic. That's the first thing we're doing. I think
your contention is that green is the best color in Modern. Is that what you said?
Both.
You think that Magic and Modern, period?
Yes, I think green is the best color in Magic, and that trickles down to Modern.
Interesting. Okay, so I was thinking about this because we talked about white. We talked about white on an episode a couple weeks ago, and the conversation then was that white is the worst color.
Correct.
You know, and the discussion is basically centered around the idea that what does white do the best? You know, what are the things white does better than anything else, and what are the things that it should do better but it doesn't? And some of the things we came up with, like white flickers better than anything else. You know, it has hate bears better than anything else. But some of the stuff that it feels like white needs to, you're like, you agreed on all this stuff 2 weeks ago.
No, I agree that white has the best flicker.
There's nothing that color that has better mono-colored hate bears.
Green is close.
No, but white definitely has better mono-colored hate bears. Green has some good ones, but white definitely has more good ones.
Let's move on with our lives. Well, I guess we're talking about green. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does.
Exactly. So I think the conversation there starts to do with the same way we started the white conversation. When Magic started, what was the point of green? Like, what was green intended to do? And we talked about Healing Salve in white.
Yeah.
Green's version of that is Giant Growth.
Right.
1 green instant, target creature gets +3/+3. So green has always been about creatures attacking big power, big toughness.
Well, I think green in original Magic had kind of two main focuses. One is creatures, right? It was the color of creatures. It had the most creatures, I think, at that point, big creatures. And then the other thing was it was the color of lands and ramp and mana, and had rampant growth effects. I think it had rampant growth. It had Llanowar Elf.
Rampant growth didn't exist in the original set. I'm trying to think what the first.
Michael, did rampant growth exist in Alpha?
I'm basically 100% it didn't.
Find out. Okay.
But I'm just trying to think what the original ramp effects were, because some of the things that they tried.
Llanowar Elf and Birds of Paradise were both.
Those are both alpha, and those are great examples of ramp, right? So those are great. And you look at some of the other stuff that green originally got that the other colors didn't get. While green does get something like a Crawworm, right? It gets the big creature for 6 mana. Green, they also tried stuff like green got Ice Storm, right? Green had its own Stone Rain. They weren't sure when they started out, which it was going to be. I mean, Sinkhole, Stone Rain, and Ice Storm all existed in Alpha.
Sure.
So initially, I think it was they were trying a few things out, but it seems like
and green still has that, right? Like green has the best non-creature permanent destruction. Not the best, but it has probably the second most diverse permanent destruction suite after white. It just can't kill creatures. Where black is probably next, can't kill enchantments or artifacts. Right. So it does have the ability, and now green can just kill creatures, right? That's one of the arguments today of why it might be the best color but it has the ability just to kill lands. It can kill planeswalkers. It has many destroy target non-creature permanent in its color pie. As non-creature permanent types have also kind of had a little bit of a bounce back at becoming a little bit more powerful. Green is better and better at just answering kind of everything.
Right. Yeah, I think the ability to push that card and add that one detail probably has to do with the fact that planeswalkers were so pushed. So a lot of the things that were going to be really good weren't going to be artifacts or enchantments. They were going to be planeswalkers. People were going to lean into planeswalkers. Green is definitely that. Green has really, really good reactive answers to permanent types that are just beyond creatures. Mm-hmm. And then of course you talk about creatures. The idea that the best creatures in Magic, and I think for the longest time Tarmogoyf was the best creature in Modern. It's not really anymore, but it was.
I have a hot take on what the best creature in Modern is.
What is it?
Primeval Titan.
I mean, that's a good answer.
In modern history, at least, yeah. Even now.
I mean, it's fit into two major tier 1 archetypes.
There's at least 4 cards banned because Primeval Titan exists on the ban list.
Yep.
Between the Locust Lands, Summer Bloom. I guess Valakut came off the ban list.
Right. I mean, the Titan Shift was a huge deck.
Is a deck, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little less now, but I mean, obviously, Amulet Titan's back into top 5 contention again.
Right.
It's like a real deck again. So yeah, I mean, Primeval Titan's really good. I think we've talked a lot about that, but again, so you talk about those Titans, and those Titans back in 2011 when they were originally printed were supposed to symbolize this is the best creature version of each of our colors.
So the new boon cycle, right, where you have blue unpermanently locks things down. Blue is probably the one that's weirdest. It just was the best anti-Titan. White reanimates things, which is weird because that's what we were talked about. Yeah. Is what should white should do that in the last episode. Red was the most just on flavor, doing damage. Black made tokens. I don't know if they actually represent the colors super well. Green does and red does, but really Grave Titan could be a white card tomorrow.
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair. Yeah.
And then in fact, Sun Titan and Grave Titan being in the colors they are, you almost think they should be switched.
I guess what I mean is the power level on those creatures being pushed, they needed to fit into their color archetypes because they each required double color in the casting cost. So you getting a creature that had Death Touch that made zombies, that's a good example. Or, in white, getting something that brings something back to life, right? They do like white to have that resurrection ability. Obviously, Primeval Titan being able to get lands out of your deck. That's, red being pound for pound damage. I think I'm not saying that necessarily the number one representation of the color are on the Titans, but it's kind of a good benchmark for about a decade ago of where they wanted those colors to go.
Well, and the reason I kind of was thinking that maybe they don't fit is I think almost a better response of what the 5 colors could be represented in that version is the Kaladesh giant guys. What are they called, Michael?
The Gearhawks.
The Gearhawks and Kaladesh. Because white is a board wipe, blue is a Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah.
Red is a damaged half card draw engine, which is very much in Red's color pie right now.
Yep.
Green gives a bunch of creatures +1/+1 counters, which is very representative of the giant growth era. and then the black one is a kill spell.
Yeah.
So like I think those are all with a life drain effect, right? They kind of all in more ways represent what the colors are supposed to be.
And they go back to the well with cycles like this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that they do consistently. We have the Cavaliers are currently legal. I mean, this is something that they like to do. And I think I agree with you that those Gear Hulks, that they feel like they're pretty on flavor. Mm-hmm. But I think if we get into, we're talking kind of more of the macro, right?
And when we're talking about green, right? We're now going through every color, and I think more the fact is why do I think at least, because I think you disagree with me, green is the most powerful color in Magic, but specifically Modern, and I think part of it is green has had one of the most powerful abilities in Magic, and that is ramp, right? Like with Birds of Paradise, Llanowar Elf, rampant growth in I think Tempest is when it was printed first when I just looked it up, and every other elf ever printed from Noble Hierarch to Deathrite Shaman, every ramp spells. I don't know if they explain it anymore.
I mean, land as a card type and interacting with land so effectively and at such quick speed with cards, everything from all the way back to crop rotation to currently, Elvish Reclaimer, to things like Primeval Titan. You have, Sylvan Scrying. I mean, there's so many things that have been printed over the years that not only ramp, but they can get lands out of your deck in a specific way.
Sure. And in early days of Magic, green was always kind of laughed at as not the best color. And the reason I believe that is true is not because it was unpowerful. It was just that artifacts were doing what green was supposed to be doing better, right? You had Moxen, you had Black Lotus, and both of those cards, and even the red and black had, black had Dark Ritual. You had these effects in other colors that were kind of taking what should be green's color pie.
Yeah.
And so then it was just a creature color because it wasn't the best ramp color. And
right.
That makes it significantly less powerful in that era. Once they pulled back, they don't really print signets anymore, which were continued up until Ravnica block.
Yeah, they cost 3 now, basically.
Even talismans were Modern Horizons only. They wouldn't print that in the standard. So green has kind of reclaimed its territory as the second most powerful effect in Magic after drawing cards, which is ramping. And if you take, and even Time Walk is a ramp card, right? Like people play
Growth Spiral.
Growth Spiral as a Time Walk in some ways, because really what it's doing is just playing an extra land and drawing a card.
Right.
So once they did that, then green's recently weird additions, it is now kind of the best cantrip color.
Now you said this off camera, and I disagree with you on this. I know your justifications here are going to be Ancient Stirrings and what? Like
Once Upon a Time?
Because, I like Once Upon a Time, but like...
What's that blue-green hybrid spell that you were so stoked about? Like, it's blue-green card.
He's talking...
The split card. It's a split card and a hybrid card.
Yeah, Incubation, Incongruity.
Incubation, Incongruity.
Right, Incubation.
Which is the blue card as well. But I guess my point is that if we look in the last 2 years, how many blue cantrips that are playable have been printed? One, and it's opt, and it's the same one every time. And green has gotten multiples. And then if you look at Modern, you have Ancient Stirrings, you have... And now you have Once Upon a Time. And I think those are just better than Preordain.
I do think Incubation is an interesting card. I think that card got overlooked by a lot of people. And I think over time that card is going to get more acknowledged because...
Well, now Once Upon a Time just does it for free. Like you get a free Incubation.
That's fair. Right? I do think that the late game effect of having an instant speed 3-mana exile your creature is a pretty good backside on the spell. Like... But it has way more to do with... I actually am way less interested in that, and even the deck that can play that, than I am in just blue and blue creature decks being able to dig 5 on turn 1. That's...
Right, because blue doesn't have good cantrips.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of the point, where like green has multiple playable cantrips. Blue has some Sleight of Hand, Serum Visions, Opt... But I'm kind of unhappy to play all 3 of them.
Yeah, it's fair. I think, obviously Ancient Stirrings, in the same way that you can talk about, like... Back before, obviously, the Planeswalker conversation was skewed by all the power recently. We used to talk about Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, and how good was he on the all-time list. And it was he's so good in one deck. Same thing with Ancient Stirrings. Obviously, it digs for a land, but aside from digging for a land, you have to have your deck built around taking advantage of that card. And,
But like, saying that it only sees play in one style of deck when there's 4 decks off the top of my head without really even blinking that I can think could play Ancient Stirrings without a problem.
There is
and they
zero...
all do, like... Amulet Titan is doing a very different thing from Tron, which is doing a very different thing from Lantern, which is doing a very different thing from Warza decks, which is doing a very different thing from XYZ. Like it. Yes, it's only finding a land and a creature versus Preordain can find any card, but lands and artifacts are so good that it doesn't matter.
You won't get any argument from me that Ancient Stirrings is an insanely good card. Yeah, it's crazy good. It is the best pure cantrip that we have. But I do think that beyond just that one, I think you're giving Once Upon a Time a lot of credit here. I think Once Upon a Time right now, in like currently what we're doing is given a lot of credit, but I actually think over time that card is going to get, people are going to like it less and less and less.
Have you played with the card?
Yeah, it's good. I love getting a free spell. Who doesn't like getting a free spell? After you get a free spell, it's fine.
Yeah, but the second one, you now are at parity with any other cantrip because you've now spent 2 mana to get 2 cantrips, and the first one you've spent, any other cantrip you've spent 2 mana to get 2 cantrips.
Unless none of them are in your opening hand, and then they're just like kind of clunky cards.
Yeah, but I played 2 mana cantrips that like have the benefit of being, and with especially now add the like one of the other benefits of Once Upon a Time, especially compared to Period End, or Serum Visions. Keep calling it Period End. They have the kind of the opposite relationship with the London Mulligan, right? Where the London Mulligan makes Serum Visions less needed. Right. I no longer need it to really sculpt my hand because I have the ability to do that. Once Upon a Time lets me take advantage of the London Mulligan to then even negate the negative of it, which is I have to go down in cards in my opening hand because I can make sure I have that and able to find the next best card when I go down in my card draw.
No, I think it's totally fair, and I think it is a really good card. So you give me those two in green having the best cantrip. I think I think blue still has better cantrips than green. I think Ancient Stirrings is a better card than any of those cards, and I think it's possible you could make an argument that like in a lot of instances you'll be happier to have Once Upon a Time, but I will be happier most of the time if I'm just building a deck and I want to be able to play blue cards to be able to say, okay, I have these things that'll just cycle through my deck quickly. And those cards you're talking about, they do require you to build decks around their functionality in a way that just like I'll play Sleight of Hand in some decks, I'll play Serum Visions in some decks because it'll get me to what I want faster.
I accept that in Modern, especially as Modern exists now, and if you listen to this week's Hot Take, we talk about how Force of Will might be a benefit to the format. So you should all go watch that. But in Modern, generically powerful decks aren't good. Like it is about being proactive. It is about finding the lands you need for Amulet Titan to go off or to find your amulet. It is about using Once Upon a Time to find the cards you need. It is about finding your Tron lands or finding your Urza pieces or finding whatever you need. It's not about just like, oh, I'm going to play a bunch of blue and red spells and hopefully I'll Serum Visions and Lightning Bolt, Snap Bolt my opponent out of the game. Like it no longer does that. That's not what the format's about. And even the blue-white decks don't even play more than 3 to 5 of them, and it's a split between Serum Visions and Opt, and they just play them because they're available. But if
I think what you're saying, you're invalidating the fact that less than a year ago, honestly, Grixis Shadow is one of the best decks. Grixis Shadow ain't playing Ancient Stirrings. It's also not playing Once Upon a Time.
Sure.
And less than a year ago, the best deck in Modern was absolutely Izzet Phoenix for several months within the last 12 months.
But that was off of a red cantrip spell, not a blue cantrip.
You still played all the blue cantrips. You were still playing Serum Visions in that deck and Thought Scour in that deck.
I will note that Grixis Shadow in particular is taking advantage of colorless cantrips.
True.
They're playing Mishra's Bauble and Street Wraith.
Yep.
As well.
Thought Scour is the one when you're
to contribute that to the conversation.
No, it's a fair point. And we're talking about you haven't mentioned Thought Scour one time. Thought Scour is a better card than those other cards.
It's not though.
In what we're trying to do with you're saying proactively taking advantage of the deck archetype, like Ancient Stirrings is getting colorless cards. Thought Scour is what gets you a Gurmag Angler to play.
Phoenix wasn't playing Thought Scour. The deck the best deck at wanting to get cards in your graveyard, right? Like at that time, Phoenix wasn't playing Thought Scour. It was playing Faithless Looting. It was playing Serum Visions, and I don't even know if it was playing that many Serum Visions.
Phoenix was absolutely playing Thought Scour. You're out of your mind.
Are you sure? On the final list that we're going around?
When I played the deck last year, I day 2'd and it was the best deck that day, everyone was playing Thought Scour.
Sure, but I don't think by the time we got to the world of Hogak that Thought Scour was a key piece of the deck.
I mean, all I'm saying is the recency bias can't be so extreme that you're saying green is best because people have played it Once Upon a Time for 7 weeks.
But that card is in that 7 weeks got banned out of Standard. And how many cards in 7 weeks have ever been banned out of Standard? That card is on the edge of being banned out of Pioneer. And we're actually not even talking about the third best cantrip in green, which is the one that also just
Veil of Summer.
Veil of Summer.
Yeah, but that's like a sideboard card. I mean, it's a great sideboard card,
Sure.
but we agreed that was like more of a meta banning than anything else. It was the decks that were really, really good. It just made those decks even better.
I don't know if we agreed on that. I mean, you said that, and I disagreed.
Well, also, if the argument is that green is the best color in Magic, and green now has access to this like extremely potent hate card, is that a problem?
Here's what I'll give you, Michael, and this is what I'll say to you, Alex. If you ask me today, going into this conversation, which color in Magic is supposed to cantrip best, the answer is blue. And if we're having an argument of which color cantrips best, and you're making a strong case that green probably does it as well, at least as well as blue, maybe better, that's a pretty strong argument because green's not supposed to do that. Right. So I'll give you that. So let's move on to the next piece of it.
So we talked about ramp, we talked about card draw. The other thing, and this isn't as relevant in Modern necessarily yet, but will be as we can continue. And you kind of touched on it when we talked about artifact and enchantment and land destruction. Is green is starting to get creature destruction, with the big bad wolf, and there's that new elephant that was in the dual deck thing. They're starting to add
Voracious Hydra.
The card's sweet.
They're starting to add creatures that when they enter the battlefield kill creatures through fighting. And yes, it's fighting, so it's kind of like red spells that they need it.
Yeah.
Flame Tongue Kavu was a tournament level card because it was a creature that entered play and killed the thing. And they're printing green Flame Tongue Kavus regularly now.
No, I think that's a really interesting point. I think the fight mechanic that is started to enter on creatures now, I actually think it's a good place to push. It's especially good for limited. It's really fun in limited play. It's not the kind of thing that I think is going to affect constructed all that much. Hydras maybe every once in a while will be.
It's having an effect on standard. It has done stuff on standard.
I know, but standard
and Pioneer theoretically will have a higher chance of those cards seeing play than in Modern.
Voracious Hydra is a big player in Pioneer in both the Hardened Scales and the Nykthos decks.
Yeah. I've seen it in those big ramp decks, the big mana decks. And I guess when I say constructed, I'm still thinking power formats. So eventually Pioneer is going to be a power format. It just still feels like it's on the fringe for me. But I like that effect. I think it's the fact that green has that kind of removal, but it is still pretty situational. And while we're talking about red, you're saying that burn can be used to kill a creature. That's a good thing. You can't kill somebody by fighting a creature unless you're fighting a creature to kill them with the creatures you already have. You can burn someone's face with a lightning bolt, or you can burn their creature.
But people play burn that only directly targets creatures. Not as much in Modern because lightning bolt exists and kind of fleshes those out. But there's definitely been. I mean, people play a braid, right? That's a card people play.
Yeah, but it also takes that artifact. I mean, there's a reason.
Well, but there's if green prints a 3/3 for 2 that when it enters the battlefield it fights target creature, how much worse is it than a braid? Really, because now you have a 3/3 creature in play versus getting an artifact. That's comparable, and they would print that card based on what they're printing right now. Right now, it's a 4 mana 3/3 that comes into play and fights.
You're saying they would print mono green Watch Wolf that fights?
I don't know. They're printing crazy things in green. I don't want them to.
That's a push. That's a hell of a push.
I guess I think the fighting creatures issue is not necessarily about what green is good at or what green should be good at. It's more about green's weakness as a color. Every color has weaknesses. Right, and white's big weakness is that lack of card advantages you talked about in their episode. But green's big weakness is if your opponent has a bigger creature than you, you are going to have trouble removing it. Or if they have a problematic creature like Urza or something, right? How is a green deck supposed to beat Urza as a card? Because it's a creature, right? It's a creature that they can't get rid of. But if you have a Voracious Hydra or a wolf with a food off your Oko or whatever, now Urza is not a problem for you anymore. And all the artifacts in the Urza deck are also not a problem for you because you can destroy those. If they play an enchantment that hoses you somehow, you can destroy that too.
The entire white episode that we had was about white's weakness is the huge limiting factor in that it can't card draw, right? And then so it can't get this card advantage engines going. It doesn't. It seems weaker than every card. Every other card has a weakness. Black can't handle artifacts and enchantments. The reason Thoughtseize was printed into Theros in the first place, which kind of broke that standard environment, was because it was the only way they can think of for Black to really have a proactive way to deal with the enchantments that were going to be powerful in that block. Blue can't kill creatures normally, right? It has to really figure out a way to get rid of them. It has to be proactive with counter magic, so it then has to hold up mana, which lowers its resource count that it puts in play. It also has other, every color has weaknesses. If green's one weakness is I can't kill creatures, and now it can kill creatures, you run into it being the best color in Magic.
No, I feel that. I understand the nature of these creatures that fight and why that's an added advantage that green doesn't otherwise get. But I think what we can agree with is that whether or not green is getting true creature removal. Because like classically, I guess like Beast Within is like that's like the thing you'd point to as like the cool green removal spell, the proper green removal spell.
Up to this point, I mean, that's kind of what Oko was doing, right? Like
Right.
people were looking at Oko and being like, oh, they still have it in play, when Oko's power level was partially that it was literally a Beast Within every turn.
Yeah,
for all intents and purposes, but better because they can't get the card out of their graveyard in any way.
I think the problem with this, and we agree, talking about multicolored cards in this conversation, it validates it. Because then if we would have, then the white episode completely changes. Because then all the white-blue cards are in play, and then that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Right, but if we're just talking mono-green, they've been pretty careful. And I mean, Beast Within is not overpowered.
I don't think they... I mean, with creature removal, sure, but in general, in the last year, they've not been careful. Like, that's my point, right? Is that...
You think that Voracious Hydra?
Voracious Hydra, Once Upon a Time, Veil of Summer, Nissa Who Shakes the World, even to some extent. Like, you have these really powerful green cards... And green was already, like, a year ago, I was arguing that green was the most powerful color in Magic, just behind Tarmogoyf and Primeval Titan and Ancient Stirrings and even Beast Within to some extent. Like, green was already in a position that I thought it was one of the best colors in Magic and in that conversation. And in the last year, they've added 5 new cards that are on people's, like, maybe should be banned lists.
So do you think that green, pound for pound, does have the best creatures? Because I think about black... And I definitely think black, Death Shadow, Gurmag Angler.
I think green has better creatures than Gurmag Angler. I think Death Shadow is comparable to green's creatures. I think it is a green card. In many ways, it's just a big creature that's cheap, right?
Right.
And from a utility perspective, I think every color has good creatures, right? Like Snapcaster Mage still exists. Stoneforge Mystic is out there just chilling.
Bob,
Thalia is really strong. Bob is not as good as it used to be.
If you name Bob as the fourth best creature in black, that's fine. He's still really good.
But on the other end, green has kind of a similar list of powerful creatures you can kind of walk through. I do think maybe black is better at creatures. And I think black is the closest to the second best color in Magic or Modern.
The other thing black has creature-wise that I think is better than green, black has the recursive engine creatures. It has Gravecrawler, it has Bloodghast. It has the stuff that... The cheap stuff it has what's the Stitcher Supplier. It has those creatures that you can, in the early stages of the game, build like a really, really complex engine that green doesn't really get access to.
Sure.
Green doesn't do that. And so...
But green has Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarch.
Those are great. I mean, those are great cards. I would say, though, that green, in the same conversation, if you're talking about cantrips that's about as good as blue, I think there's a strong argument black creatures are about as good as green creatures, possibly better. I don't think green... And green is supposed to do creatures best. It's supposed to be the creature color.
Sure.
So I think that's maybe one of the knocks.
Well, green and white are supposed to be the creature colors, right? Like, it used to be green in the early days of Magic, and then white slowly got more and more better creatures. That's where the Hate Bear conversation comes in. They have the Thalias and the Stoneforge Mystics, where green has the Oof, and that's kind of the main Hate Bear that you really can hang a hat on. Planeswalkers, I think, is the one place that green is not the best color at. I guess is the last kind of card type. Interesting. I don't know if it needs it, right? Like, I think that's one of the issues it's always had. It still has really good ones. Like, obviously, Nissa Who Shakes the World is a good example of one right now that's being very powerful in Pioneer and Standard. Historically in Modern, I want to say Garruk is the best mono green Planeswalker.
Okay.
I can't think of another... Like, none of the 6-mana Garruks have seen play. I'm talking about original 4-mana Garruk.
4-mana Garruk is sweet. I was going to say 3-mana Nissa is the one that comes to mind for me. And it's never really made the impact that I think people have wanted it to. But that card, to me, has always felt like it's been right there. Like, this card works. It does enough cool things if you're going wide.
I almost like New Vivian more than that, even if we're talking about 3-mana Nissas.
Yeah.
Or 3-mana Planeswalkers that are green. Because giving all your creatures flash is powerful, and she draws you a card, and she pumps a creature. She just doesn't defend herself very well.
Yeah.
And, like, her compared to Narset, or 3-mana Teferi, or Karn, or Liliana the Veil, or Liliana of the defeated Emrakul. Last hope.
It would have been really cool if we had gotten a 3-mana green Planeswalker out of War of the Spark that was on power level of those ones you just mentioned. Like, an uncommon 3-mana Narset level green Planeswalker. That would have been really dope. Are you just thinking that because it's backed up by creatures so much, it would have just been too good?
No, I just don't know if I need another Planeswalker at that power level.
Yeah, that's fair.
I want more Planeswalkers at, like, the power level of Gideon.
Which Gideon?
Battle of Zendikar. Or even 5-mana Gideon would be great.
Oh, you
or,
want more
like,
of the 4-mana Gideon or 5-mana Gideon?
like that power level of Planeswalker. I would like Wizards to take a break from 2 and 3 mana Planeswalkers. I think they have.
Are you of the belief that the classic powerful 4-mana Planeswalker is like the sweet spot? That's like what you want to have in Magic.
Yeah, I want them to keep trying to do cool stuff. I am very sick of the 5-mana Planeswalker that's plus ability draws a cards, minus ability kills a creature, and ultimate wins the game.
Yeah.
Like that card I'm fine never seeing again.
The Ob Nixilis, basically.
Yeah, or like Ral Zarek. Like literally we could just do an entire episode just ranking Planeswalkers that do exactly that.
Yeah.
It'd be an hour-long thing. Like I like Nissa Who Shakes the World. I like static Planeswalker abilities. I think they're really cool. We've talked many times on how I think shouldn't the way they harm your opponent needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
But I think that green getting a good 2 and 3 mana Planeswalker, plus the fact that look at it did. I know we're not supposed to talk about gold cards in this episode, but between Red and 6 and Oko, yes, in Modern you have to splash a color to play those cards, but in Modern it's not hard to do that.
Like so egregious that
and
you could play both those cards.
Yeah, think about it. the of the best green decks, they're either all playing Oko or are playing Red and 6.
Yeah,
and both are extremely powerful.
Are there good decks in Modern playing Ren and 6?
Well, no, not right now.
Fair point.
It's not the same without Wasteland, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Jund is not the best value deck in the world where Urza and Oko exist.
So why'd they print Emery? It's like, come on, guys.
Emery? It should have been white. I think I've been very hard on the Emery should have been a white card.
I just can't believe. Like you read the card in the first place and you're like, oh, there was a typo. This has to have been a typo because there's no way that this could be so simply just ridiculous. And it just is. It's everything you think it's going to be. Do you know that I had not cast an Urza yet until this last weekend? I literally cast it for the first time this last weekend.
Cool.
It was so sweet.
It's really good. It's really good.
So
that was like the card we were most excited for you to play.
I know. It's just the thing is, it's hard for me to get to it because it costs 4, and I have. It's not only that I'm scared of things that cost more than 1 and 2. I don't know how to play them. When I don't understand how to cast them. They sit in my hand.
Is you play some artifacts that cost 1 and 2 ahead of time, and then you play him. And then he was free at that point because all those artifacts tap from him.
Oh no, it was unbelievable. What happened when I played him was so great.
Yeah, it's really good. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's an argument that black's the best color in Modern. I think there's an argument that blue's the best color in Modern. And I think there's an argument that green's the best color in Modern. I think green has had the largest power suite introduced to its color pie in a time where it doesn't need it. Like green was already very good, and over the last 2 years, it's just become more and more powerful as time has gone on. Versus colors like white that have hurt a little bit. And I think actually blue, though it got Emery and though it got Urza, and its artifacts matter theme, I think is maybe problematic. I think blue's ability to answer things is something that's been pulled back on, and I would wish it would got better. And
I feel like the artifact decks that we see, particularly in Modern, are mostly based on old mistakes. Obviously, Emery is a powerful card and Urza is a powerful card, but a lot of the things that are enabling those decks to go over the top are Mox Opal and Mishra's Bauble and Arkham's Astrolabe, and just I guess Arkham's Astrolabe is a recent artifact mistake, but a lot of these, it's still kind of the sins of the past are what's busting artifact decks nowadays.
Right.
Even though there are strong artifact cards being printed, Urza wouldn't be that good in Standard. Emery's not that good in Standard.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, I mean, if you can come up with an even more clear example of what you just said. Pioneer. If you want to build the Urza deck in Pioneer, you can't really do it. It doesn't exist.
there are Emery decks in Pioneer. There's also Emery decks in Standard that are doing well now.
The Emery decks in Pioneer are Kethis decks that have a couple of artifacts.
Exactly. They're fine. I'm just saying when you look for the artifact support cards that make that good in Pioneer, you're missing basically all the cheap things that draw cards or accelerate your mana really efficiently. And so it has to do with just the redundancy that's been printed for such a long time.
Well, and that was an argument for Force Will, right? Where we talked about how we wanted Force Will to print into Modern, because Modern is becoming more of the legacy of yesteryear, where they have stopped really caring about Standard cards and their effect on Modern because there's no way for them to care. There's no way to really figure that out. But Modern doesn't have a stopgap like Force Will. It has Thoughtseize.
I was just going to say, I think we actually will get to some of the other colors at some point. I like these conversations. I think talking about blue on the next episode seems like a fun idea. We do have to wrap up this portion and get to the deck tech, and I have to catch my flight.
Yeah. So you're going to be replaced by Michael.
I'm going to swap out.
Tech.
All right, guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm in this chair now.
Everyone say hi to Michael. You guys
I was already there. I've been around.
And your face was around.
That's true.
Power
they
of
see my face.
The power of the live
time.
stream. So today we're doing a deck tech. That's the next thing, and it's green. There's some red in there. There's a lot of Hydras. those card names are going to be way easier for you to read because you know what cards are called, and they're like all of the Hydras.
Okay, so we're going to read the whole list?
That seems
Yeah, right.
seems stressful. So for people who are wondering, in the description of the live stream, the episode, and everywhere else, there's a link to the tapped out for this deck list. It's insane. I don't want to read the whole list because literally
It's a lot of one-ofs.
there are 25 creatures. Of them, there are only 4 cards that are repeated.
Yeah, so it's the description for the deck that was submitted was a Gruul deck idea inspired by Greek mythology. So we got a lot of Hydra-related stuff for Greek mythology, and this is actually not super easy to read. Let me read it on here. So we've got a little bit of early ramp into your Hydras with some Elvish Mystics.
Awakening Zone.
Yeah, Awakening Zone will also help you ramp into your Hydras. We got Shaman of Forgotten Ways to help you ramp into Hydras. And then we have a ton of Hydras. We got 1 Apocalypse Hydra, 1 Gargos Vicious Watcher, which discounts your Hydras, 1 Genesis Hydra, 1 Hero's Bane, 1 Hydra Broodmaster, 2 Colonian Hydra, which is the one that doubles counters, 1 Managorger Hydra, which is a cheap little guy. So a lot of big X dudes and a little bit of ramp and some non-creature spells to support it.
Yep. So, as we talk about it, what this deck is kind of doing cool, and one thing I wanted to talk about, and this was submitted by our Patreon. So, if you guys don't know about it, we talk about it often. We have a Patreon. It has how we're able to do a lot of things we're doing, including all of the new technology that was failing on us for half the episode today. But this was submitted by Derek Stafford.
That's what happens when I'm the producer, though, instead of Ruben, because I don't know how any of this works.
We're learning on the fly. It's a holiday episode. Crazy stuff happens. We got. There's going to be some people coming on later. There'll be an animated segment with Boba Fett on. We're going to have some Chewbacca's coming on, a Baby Yoda, hopefully.
Ooh.
We can only hope.
Wow, yeah. How many views would we get with a guest spot from Baby Yoda?
Probably all of them. All of the views. But as one of those tiers, if you submit on a $10 tier, you can submit a deck for us to go over. Derek Stafford, as I mentioned earlier in the cast, is who submitted this deck list. And it is a lot of one-ups. And one thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit on a testing level on how interesting it could be to play more of a singleton style deck. Obviously, there's some engine cards, and he even leads into this for the fact that he's playing 4 Elvish Mystic. This deck is also probably relatively inexpensive, so the advice we give on here shouldn't just be like, oh, jam these $100 cards into here.
Yeah, I think that, yes, there is some value to one-ofs.
And the idea is more just testing, right? Like if you're trying to invent a deck and this is one that's so off the wall where this one's like, I just want to play every Hydra in the game almost, and you want to see how they work, playing one of each one of them for a few games or many games helps you kind of learn like, oh, this card works, this card doesn't. This gets you an idea of like, oh, this Hydra actually doesn't do anything and just comes in as a big dude that attacks and they can answer it with every threat in the sun or threat removal under the sun. But this actually ends up being really powerful. This is a better position in the format than I think people are thinking and does better than I even thought it would be. And therefore I should have more of this card. And this allows you to kind of see what works and doesn't work.
Right, yes. So I would say that my one recommendation for this deck is like kind of figure out, be a little more focused. Like you were saying, you want to focus on your engine cards like Elvish Mystic. I think that like the cheap ramp is pretty important if you're going to be playing a bunch of X creatures or like Hydras that tend to cost more mana. So I think it's good to, like on paper, figure out what you want your deck to be, and that's obviously cast big Hydras and kind of come up with, you know, a suite of cards that's going to help you do that. Right now, I think that this deck seems a little heavy on the Hydras, and I think, yeah, maybe just playing a bunch of one of Hydras is what you want to do, but I think that like some of the support that those Hydras needs is like more Elvish Mystic type cards, or perhaps using like Arbor Elf with Utopia Sprawl, something like that, like the ramp engines that we see, you know, having success in Modern, in order to cast a lot of these big Hydras, rather than stuff like Gaia's Anthem, which is just giving all your creatures +1/+1, which is maybe a cool effect if you're going wide with like a bunch of small creatures, but that's not really what this deck is trying to do. So I think kind of focusing on figuring out what your main plan is. When you're building like a brew like this, you want to figure out what your main plan is. You want to like make sure that your support cards in your deck are supporting your main plan, because you have the cards that are your plan, right? It's the big Hydras. And I I think that there's something to be said for maybe picking out the 5 best Hydras and just playing 4 of each or whatever. Or, not 4 of each, but playing multiples of each. But if like you think it's like a cool, fun deck idea to just play a bunch of different rando Hydras, you can do that.
Yeah.
But just make sure that your support cards are like moving in the same direction as that plan, as opposed to being a little bit all over the place with one-ofs in other areas that like you don't need a one-of there.
Yeah, and I think Hydras are interesting as a one-of plan. Sorry, Mike. Partially because there's 2 mics. Partially because there is of the 5 iconic creatures, angels, demons, sphinxes, hydras, and dragons, Hydras are the most kind of pigeonholed into a mechanical archetype. Like
they do
kinda,
1/1 counters.
Yeah, they all like kind of do it with an X attached somewhere on the card. Not all of them,
often,
but many of them. Yeah. And because of that, like they all kind of just like, oh, if you ramp, I'm good. And they all have different effects when they do those things, being anywhere from killing artifacts with the new Turtle Hydra, which might be my favorite card from the most recent set from an emotional perspective. I want to protect it. To being able to directly fight creatures with Voracious Hydra, to doubling the size of all the counters you on everything. Like they all do something relatively different that do work together. So there's an argument for playing 15, or not 15 different Hydras, but like picking 2 of each of the Hydras that are good, or some more singletons.
Yeah, and I think that like you said, playing this deck and kind of figuring out which Hydras you like and which ones you don't like, because there are so many like very different Hydras in here. We have like a Pelucranos, Primordial Hydra, Savageborn Hydra, Gargos, Vicious Watcher, Hero's Bane, Managorger Hydra, Colonian Hydra, Mistcutter Hydra. Kind of like playing this deck and just kind of seeing, oh, when I played the Colonian Hydra, it did exactly what I wanted, and I think that maybe I want to try and pick up more of those. But when I played the Hero's Bane, it was like a little bit too slow at doing its thing, and I wasn't a fan of it, right? And if that's the thing, is like you want to figure out your plan. If you're trying to build some like casual, janky, fun modern deck that contains just a ton of different Hydras, maybe that's what your plan is, and you don't want to focus at all. You don't want to like turn that Hero's Bane into a Mistcutter Hydra because you found that Mistcutter Hydra was exactly what you needed. You wanted the haste or whatever, right? Maybe you want to play both because that's the point of the deck. But if that's the point of the deck, I think... One, right? Yeah, it is. Yeah. I lost to that in a GP, felt really bad. I was playing mono blue. And I'll never forget what that card does. And so yeah, I mean, like there's a lot to be said for like playing some of these cards over, like some of these Hydras over others. But I think the main way to clean up this deck is kind of figure out how to focus your support cards around what your main plan is.
Yeah, it's interesting because the like all the different Hydras game plan actually doesn't seem that crazy to me. What on this list that I think needs to be a little bit more consolidated is, and you kind of just said this, is kind of all of the enchantments, all of the creatures that are ramp spells, all of those things need to be a little bit more focused so that you can support that game plan.
Right. You want to be able to execute your game plan as often as in as many games as possible. Mm-hmm. And if you are drawing too many, Hardened Scales and Gaia's Anthems and Cindervines, you're going to have trouble casting your Hydras on time, and you're just going to die before you get to do that. So I think it's important to make sure that like the support for the core of your deck, no matter how absurd that core may be, you want to make sure that your support system is there to make sure to get you there as often as possible. Right. And sometimes with like a slow ramp deck like this, that's ramping into something that is not like Ulamog or something, is still sometimes just going to get run over, or like your opponent is going to have too many removal spells and you're not going to draw enough Hydras or whatever. And like that's kind of a consequence of playing a deck like this. But if you're willing to take that risk, I think you want your support system to give you the best chance.
And like, there's things that this deck can do if you can ramp out correctly that are insane. Like Mistcutter Hydra against Urza decks, if you get in quick enough, like they can't stop that card.
Yeah, protection from blue stops it from being elked.
Yeah, it's elk proof.
Yeah.
And I think that this is also a deck, like there's some pretty inexpensive things that I would think about adding. Like you're playing 4 Elvish Mystic, you can add 4 Llanowar Elf. Like pretty
yeah,
easily.
Or Once Upon a Time, budget permitting.
And then you also have options like you have Nykthos here. I think going up to 2 Nykthos makes sense to me. A card that I would love to see how this would do, and I'd love your feedback if you try it out, is the green Hedge card. The mythic green from Eldraine. Like one card.
Henge?
Henge.
Henge. It's not a wall made of plants. It's like standing stones, right? A henge.
Is it not made out of plants though?
No, it's made out of stones. Like Stonehenge.
Like Stonehenge.
But it's the Great Henge.
You know, I knew it was henge, but there's definitely was a portion of my life where I thought Stonehenge was Stonehenge, probably. Fun fact, I'm assuming. And there's just
going
like
back to that.
Stone walls all around it. It's a big circle wall of stone.
Yeah, that's fair. It is a little bit of a stone hedge.
Henge.
Yeah, Great Henge.
Great Henge.
It does put +1/+1 counters on your creatures, which is clearly a theme of this deck.
It'll make your late game like Llanowar Elves and Elvish Mystics better because you'll just be able to make them bigger with that effect, and they'll draw you cards, so you can cantrip through them.
I think I would also go up on the land count. We're only playing 22 lands here, which I think is low for a deck with so many mana sinks. Like, I think getting mana flooded in this deck is fine. You just like, here's a big Hydra. Oh, top decked another big Hydra.
Right.
Getting mana screwed in this deck, you're like playing 1/1 and 2/2 Hydras that are just like unplayable. Like, you really need to make sure you hit your first 4 or so land drops and draw some ramp spells, and then your deck really starts going off. So I would want to up the land count in this deck as well.
And I think, and I don't think you're playing some of my favorite Hydras even.
I assume the person submitting this deck is playing all of their favorite Hydras.
Yes. So some of the Hydras I would like love to see is what's the one that lets you like that not Cascades, but gets the next
Genesis Hydra.
There's
one in the deck.
There is one in the deck.
Yeah, there's one. Genesis Hydra is a little bit awkward in here, actually, with other Hydras, I would say. So it does provide card advantage, which I like, and it, kind of generates mana in that, like, you get to cast the card for free. The problem is cascading with a Genesis Hydra into another Hydra with X in its cost doesn't do anything, right? So, like, I think that, like, playing some Genesis Hydra in here is, like, kind of a way to get some card advantage is going to be good, but also, it's going to be awkward.
Henge might be a better position for that spot because it does kind of a similar thing, but more in game plan.
And it adds mana. You have to have a big creature out before it does anything is like the tricky part, right? Like, you can play Genesis Hydra for 3 and maybe cascade into a Rampant Growth or something, but like you can't play the Great Henge unless you have a big creature in play cheapening it, or you have 9 mana, I guess. But
the other card is I think just like and going up on utility Hydras more than necessarily big beefy Hydras. So going up on Voracious Hydras. Doing the Turtle Hydra because it like answers artifacts and enchantments, which I think is like a very important utility skill. And like leaning into adding some more of those just so you have, if your plan is versatility with how many Hydras you're playing, have versatile Hydras.
That's one thing that I think is really nice about Voracious Hydra is that it is a utility Hydra that also can just be big. Like if at this moment you just need to spend all your mana and make a 10/10, you just make it a 10/10. But if your opponent has some threatening creature in play, you can fight it instead and make a 5/5. You know? I also like that there's an aspect of Hydra in here.
Just from a flavor perspective.
That's the deck, right? Is like the deck is a Hydra deck. You got the aspect of Hydra.
Is that Kalini Hydra? Is that the one that's just
Colony
like
Hydra?
calling? I'm never going to say any word correctly. Why are you asking me of that? No, it's not. It's Colonian Hydra that it has. I would actually think
Hydra.
Colony
Hydra?
The one that is green, and costs 1 green less for every green thing would be good here.
I don't know if you have that many green creatures in the deck. Not to mention your 2 colors, so you like have a fair number of red sources that don't tap for green. Not a fair number, but you have some number.
I was also going to say maybe cut red.
Yeah, you could probably cut red. I think
you're playing it right now for some of the Hydras.
Yeah, Apocalypse Hydra, namely. And I think Apocalypse Hydra could just become more Voracious Hydra. Like, they do a pretty similar thing in that they, like, double the number of counters you put on them. I think Voracious Hydra has more flexibility and trample. Kind of outclasses Apocalypse Hydra by a lot, in my opinion. And I'm a fan of Apocalypse Hydra. I played it. My first commander deck that I ever built was a Roshin Meanderer commander deck, who taps for 4 mana, but you can only send it on X's. Apocalypse Hydra is my best friend. She's a red-green commander.
Yeah.
So I just played huge Apocalypse Hydras for like many of my early commander experiences. But yeah, I think unfortunately Voracious Hydra is taking Apocalypse Hydra's crown because it does most of the same things and also can fight and has trample.
The reason I was thinking of Kalini Hydra is partially because A, we're recommending going up on elves, right? And then that helps
That's fair.
A lot. B, it helps with the Great Henge on both ends because it can be able to be. Well, I guess it only helps on the back end, but eventually it's free, right? And you can just start cantripping through it. The other thing is if you're doing the Nykthos game plan, it also is just a big,
that's
the best
true.
Nykthos Hydra on the planet. If
this became a little bit more devotion focused, then sure, that is like definitely a cute way to up your devotion that's like moderately competitive, right? I mean,
And on theme, which is, I think,
That's on theme.
I think you need to be on theme with what we're
and
talking.
if you aspect of Hydra targeting your colony Hydra, I feel like that's the way to go.
That's maybe one of the best things you could do with this deck. In fact, I'm disappointed that you don't have that available to you now. And all of the other recommendations are less important than putting Kalini Hydra in this deck for that reason. So yeah, I think that's kind of the main comments we have for this deck. Unless you have anything else? No.
I think we covered it.
A big shout out to kind of everything. Big shout out to Ben. Hope he's getting home safe. He's flying to the great north of Seattle.
Yeah.
What are you doing for Thanksgiving?
I'm going to my wife's mom's house for Thanksgiving in the afternoon, and then I'm going to my mom's house in the evening because she does Thanksgiving late.
Oh, you're doing double Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I'm
going
doing
to
double
Mississippi.
That's exciting.
I'm gonna. My wife's family lives there. Tupelo, Mississippi, birthplace of Elvis.
Is he one of those celebrities that has like multiple people claiming that they're the birthplace?
No, they
like
have
Abe Lincoln.
They have his house.
Okay.
He's not that old.
Well, I know, but
Like Abe Lincoln,
but like he could have like been born in this city, but he only lived there till he was 3, and then he grew up in this city, but he went to high school in this city, and that's what Abe Lincoln has, right? Is it's like he grew up in this log cabin, but he lived in this log cabin when he was like 10 or whatever.
I believe that is what's happening here.
Okay, yeah,
he lived there until he was like somewhere between born and 10, and then moved somewhere else. Yeah. I'm assuming Graceland.
I don't know.
I have no idea.
That sounds like something he only did when he was rich, right?
More weird fun. Yes. More fun facts about my life. I think one of the most embarrassing moments of my high school career.
This is some bonus Masters of Modern content right now.
I was in an improv class and I was decent at it. I mean, I think one of the reasons I can do this podcast or podcast in general is because I took that class 4 years in a row.
Everybody is so lucky that you took that class.
I know. Podcasts are happening because of it. And it was just playing games and you got a grade for it.
Sure, yeah.
But we had to do a presentation at the end of every year in front of like parents and school people that are willing to stay after school to go to that type of show. And we did like the dating game and
dangerous.
We like each got a character and I was Elvis. I still know nothing about Elvis.
Nice.
I couldn't do an imitation of Elvis if you paid me a lot of money, and I absolutely couldn't do it in high school. So I got wrecked. I just was like, did nothing. It was embarrassing.
That sucks.
Yeah. So I hate Elvis.
Wow. I didn't know it was going to take such a dark turn at the end.
Just everything about him. Except his birthplace, because that's where my wife is from.
Yep.
She wasn't even born there, so it's fine.
Are we wrapping up the episode now?
Yeah. So thanks everyone for watching on the chat. Thank you everyone for listening. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, we have a new release schedule. So this stream will become unavailable unless you're a patron. So for all patron members, there is an unlinked version of this available to you. It's kind of the raw feed as long as you are a $5 tier or above. For everyone else, Thursday, there'll be an edited version of this video with card art and everything. And make sure to try and check in every Tuesday at 1 to catch the live stream. And then on Mondays, we're also now releasing new content called MMCast Hot Takes. What are, kind of mini episodes. We'll generally record them on the live stream. But sometimes we won't. And there'll be kind of new, different off-topic things that we'll be releasing as separate videos. This last week, we did Should Force of Will be printed into Modern?
Wait, what's the take? The take is a statement, right?
It should be.
Force of Will should be in Modern.
Yeah,
that's the take, right?
Okay. And then the week before that, we did Lightning Bolt should be reprinted in Standard to be in Pioneer.
Yeah.
And then I think there was a week before that we had a different hot take.
It was the top 5 cantrips in Modern.
Got it. That Once Upon a Time is in the top 5.
Which kind of inspired a lot of the discussion in this episode, discussing like, hey, wait, actually, too many of the top 5 cantrips are not blue.
Mondays, hot takes. Tuesdays, live streams. Wednesday, audio releases for podcast listeners. Thursday, edited video releases. And then on weekends, we're starting to do just streams. So I'm streaming every week. Last week I did it on Friday. The weeks before that I've done it on Sundays and Saturdays. Michael was going to start helping out. Ben's going to start streaming. We're going to do a bunch of fun stuff. Michael so far has been my opponent and I think has a current 100% success rate at beating me in Brawl. Maybe I've won once. It's close.
It's close.
And then, so make sure to come check that stuff out. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Cass Wiley.
I'm at Dudard, Dudardd.
Thank you to all of our patrons for making this stuff happen. It's the reason all of this new stuff is able to be a thing that we're doing. Thank you, Matt Kessler, for coming out with the new audio that we have for the intro outro. It's dope. And make sure to follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/theMMcast, and me on Twitch which is Kesco. So twitch.tv/Kesco. You can catch my live streams. I'm now affiliated, so you can subscribe. I accomplished that.
Oh, wow.
last
Officially?
week. Yeah, I'm officially affiliated.
Cool. I
signed
knew you
up all
got like the
paperwork.
email. I wasn't sure if you like did the process.
I did the process.
Nice.
So you could be a subscriber to me.
You got Amazon Prime. You can get
free.
one subscription for free per month, and you can give it to Alex.
Yeah, that'd be great. I need to figure out what my emotes are.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we're figuring that out. I saw like the area where I get to pick what my emotes are, and it's very intimidating. Thank you guys, everyone. Thank you, live chat. Make sure to like. That's the last thing I guess we didn't really talk about. Like stuff, like the video, like the episode, like everything. If there's a thing that we show up on and there's an option to click a thumb up button, just press it wherever it is.
Wise words.
And thank you, Michael, for jumping on and filling in for Ben.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, guys.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.